As we are here, we mainly talk about technology, but also about how are we going to scale. And that's where not only the community, but also venture capitalists come in. You need money, right, to scale. So here we have one, a very remarkable one indeed, because he has been amongst IoT builders for quite some time, so he knows how you guys think, how you guys work, how you guys operate, but he also knows how to scale up using venture capitalists. He's the co-founder and partner at Riot Ventures, and he's going to talk about scaling companies with IoT products people want. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Stefan Marcus. You're all set? Great.
Thanks, everybody. My clicker. All right, thanks for having me. I'd like to thank Vinke and the team here at the Things Network for having me here. I catered this talk to people who want to build companies and want to hear about, just from the initial stages of thinking about a company, what's the most important sort of 10 things that you can do when you're thinking about your IoT company. Let's see if this works. There we go. All right, just some context. I'm a third generation engineer. My background's really computer science and electrical engineering. I grew up in the hardware business. My grandfather was a builder of Air Force bases. My father is a RF and antenna systems expert, pioneer in microwave and satellite communications. I think growing up in that family, one of my first, screen time toys with a spectrum analyzer and watt meter. So I'm just into hardware. I've been an amateur radio operator since age 12, so I'm really deeply embedded in this space. I've started 6 companies in hardware and software. I used to build wireless carriers, sort of soup to nuts. That means I was in the wireless spectrum business, the licensed spectrum business. I was in the tower business. I've been a carrier in some markets, retailing handsets and equipment, things like that. Most of the time, actually, without VC. I've been an investor for as long as I've been an entrepreneur. I probably invested maybe in 24 companies, and that collective seed portfolio is worth about $4 billion now. So I really have seen companies from their formative stages to grow up to be big public companies. I'm based in Boston. I have an office in Los Angeles as well, but I'm US based. A lot of people think there's 2 sides of venture capital. I think there's 2 sides of venture capital. A lot of people think venture capital is the dark side. I tend to think we're part of the resistance. This is challenging the status quo. It's not hard. It's not easy. It's very hard. We started Riot really to cater to the Internet of Things market. That was the initial play here. In fact, just as an engineer, I thought of what to name a venture fund that catered to IoT companies and said, geez, it should have IoT in the name. What's the shortest thing I can spell with IoT in it? Riot. I thought it was a good name. It goes into other things. We do early stage investing. So seed investing, this is typically the first money into companies. We know hardware. We know hardware and software. This is an interesting time in IoT. So if you take a layer of abstraction of what IoT really is, it's really giving a lot of human characteristics to software. We are giving it the eyes, the ears, the hands, the feet, the mouth, to really feel and sense the world. And so this is the second era of machines. It's really an exciting time, and we think there's actually a perfect storm going on. 10 years ago, cloud computing and storage was 10 times the price, and hardware is cheaper. I mean, you can open a Mauser catalog and pick out microphones and all sorts of batteries and transformers for cents on the dollar. And really, the Things Network is also going to be a major step function in cost, transport bits. So there's a lot of power. Internet connectivity is cheap. Hardware is cheap. This is the best time to be in the IoT business. Just to give you a flavor of things we invest in, really, we started this fund in April. We've invested in 5 companies. Almost all have IoT as a core component. We're invested in a company that has a robot that goes around retail stores and helps retailers actually inventory the store. It's an internet-connected robot, and it wouldn't have any value if it weren't connected to the internet. We're invested in a company that's actually helping streamline pharmaceutical R&D. Internet-connected, IoT, robotics are all key components of that company. We're in the transportation business. We backed a company that actually brings a lot of IoT, software and services to the autonomous vehicle space. You've seen a vehicle out front. Very exciting space. So here are the 10 keys to building an IoT company. Whenever I think about starting a company, I think about what kind of customer do I want? I think picking a good customer is really important. My dad will tell you that a customer that pays on time is probably worth more than anything, because cash flow is very important. But I've had some huge customers that don't pay, and I've had little customers that pay really well. So I think finding a good company is important. They have a big chronic problem. So I think you have to pick a problem that really hurts for a customer. Sometimes you might think of IoT as just sort of on the periphery. A lot of them have big IoT problems. A company should be profitable. If they don't have any money, if they're rubbing 2 pennies together, I love agriculture, but a lot of farmers just don't have any money. So solving their problems, although may be worthwhile for them, they really don't have money to give you. I like startups that tackle small and less bureaucratic companies. I recently met with a company that had one of the largest train companies in the world as their customer. Sounds really sexy to go after a big company. The problem is it saps the life out of a small startup. They tend to dominate your product. They dominate the direction of the company. They don't pay you much because they know they're worth a lot to you. So it's counterintuitive, but they pay you less because it's a big referenceable customer. You want to go after smart customers. Smart customers understand the value of what you're bringing. If you go to one that doesn't really understand what IoT is or understand how to leverage technology, you're going to have a hard time selling them on a solution. You want them to be referenceable. So picking a customer that is respected by other customers is really important. Nearby. I've seen companies with the startups that pick a customer that's 1,000 miles away, or you're in the US, or you're in Europe, you're trying to service a customer in the US, you end up on a plane all the time, it's very expensive, you really can't get the information you need. Try to pick somebody nearby. One where you have an existing relationship. If you know the industry or you know the customer, that's better than just going cold into a new industry, into an area you don't know. The second most important thing, losing everything here. The second most important thing is assembling a great team. The team actually is number one in my book, because assembling a great team, teams are what scale businesses. You can't do everything by yourself. Having multiple co-founders, the data show having multiple co-founders increases your likelihood of success. Have functional diversity, but don't silo. Don't just go, I'm a technical person, I'm an engineer, I need one of those business people to do all the sales, marketing, and finance things. That's the dirty side of it, let them do it. That actually doesn't work. It's better to collaborate. Have somebody who's responsible for it, but collaborate with them. You need to work with your customer, figure out what the product is, figure out what the business is. It's a constant collaboration. It's not siloed. You do that, I do this. Have some domain expertise. I know people who show up, if you have some hardware expertise, but you've never really built a product, or you've never really sold something into the industry you're selling into, it's very important to have some domain expertise. Either you've manufactured something before, you're a hardware engineer, you have sold into it, you've been on the sales team, whatever it might be, have some domain expertise. Obviously, you don't want to start a company like an IoT company without being technical. You have to have some technical intelligence on your team. Somebody hyper-technical would be really great as a co-founder. Start with the problem not the hardware. I don't know if you guys know what this is, but this is Juicero. This is a company that's raised $120 million to just squeeze what you can squeeze with your hand. It looks really awesome. It's internet connected, IoT. The problem is that these people didn't think about the problem first. They thought about the hardware. It's a really sexy juice squeezer. And I know that I can get really excited about hardware. I love hardware. I just look at the stuff and I get excited. It's like kid in a candy store. I love putting stuff together. But just start with the customer problem first. Where does it hurt? And come up with a solution. So what are you trying to do? In a B2B context, you go up to a company, you say, hey, where does it hurt? They say, oh, it hurts here. Are you helping them with a revenue item? Like if you deliver the solution, are they going to make more money or are they going to save cost? If I had to pick, I'd pick revenue. Why? Well, because revenue is worth more. Cost is only a fraction of that. So every % improvement I can give them on revenue increases their profitability. Every % I save them on cost, it really saves them less than that. So just keep that in mind. Try to help your customer make more money first. If you can't, cost is a good one. I mean, some people have big cost numbers. So here's an example. GE makes 70% of the world's jet engines. They actually don't sell jet engines. They lease you a jet engine. And that jet engine is sold on an hourly basis. So you pay per hour of use of that engine. On a typical engine, they've got 5,000 parameters. There's a couple dozen sensors. They're all connected. And it's a mix of live and asynchronous data. They use that to do predictive maintenance. They want that to know when that engine part or piece is going to fail before it fails. Why? Because they care about uptime. They don't care about, they don't want that engine to sit idle. And if you're not GE has a large team of people who handle predictive maintenance and anomaly detection. There actually is a company that we backed called Sentinai. So if you guys are thinking about IoT and the cross-section of AI, trying to figure out predictive maintenance or come up with your own algorithms, Sentinai is a good platform for that. Make sure whatever you're connecting has significant value from the connectivity. So I've seen people who just do a nice little feature, which is to add some scheduler or get some really kind of tertiary piece of data from something else that's main value is different. We're in the IoT business. We want to see a lot of value from the connectivity. It's difficult to do that if it weren't connected, kind of thing. I like to think of like the optic nerve. IoT is the optic nerve. It connects the eye to the brain. That's what this lower layer is. It is the optic nerve that connects the thing that's generating a lot of value, and then if you didn't connect, it wouldn't have a lot of value. For instance, nice consumer example, but this is a coffee machine that's internet connected. Great. It just schedules when you get your coffee. And some of that, for some of you, that's really valuable. But really the value is the coffee that it makes. It's not the internet connectivity. So not everything needs to be connected. However, there are a lot of resources. Obviously, having the cloud, compute and storage so cheap and accessible, you can do a lot. You can now offload a lot of that power that you needed at the edge to the cloud. Drives down cost, it's really nice. But edge computing is also really interesting, that you can now have a lot of compute really inexpensively at the edge. Autonomous vehicles is an example. It creates terabytes of data. You really can't port that to the cloud, do some compute, and then tell the car where to go. It doesn't work. You really need edge computing for that. But don't be afraid to just talk amongst yourselves in IoT, that you can have your solution just be an intrinsic solution that solves some sort of other problem that doesn't have to go to the internet. Go deep on a space. Own a space. So I think a lot of people are really, like to go an inch deep, mile wide, because they're not sure exactly how to solve a customer's problem. If you go deep on a space, you can become the master of that domain, and you can actually drive a lot of value creation. If you know somebody's business really well, you really can help them build it. Deep integration also makes it so that they can't take you out easily. So the deeper you are into somebody's business, the harder it is for them to remove you. continue to deliver value. I've seen a lot of companies try to shove a subscription into their IoT solution. They just say, you know what, it's there. I've got some little microservice that you're paying for. You owe me $50 a month per device. And it has marginal value. So I think you don't want to force a subscription, but you want to find a way to continue to sell your customers something every year. You're paying a lot of money to get a customer. It takes you a lot of time and effort. You want to make sure that you keep that customer and continue to sell them either new hardware, new IoT every year, like V1, V2, V3, V4, V5. Have some roadmap. But try to leverage that channel. Try to, once you get it, continue to pump new services to them. Service also matters too. It doesn't have to be new IoT hardware product. It could be just a service. Firmware over the air is a great subscription service. The more devices you have, the harder that is. And look for customer references. Obviously, if you go deep on a space, they're going to know other people, and they're going to be able to refer you over. That's how you get some channel leverage, really efficiency on that dollar you spent to go get that customer. Find also that people don't think about this as a software business. IoT, you think about the embedded software that goes in, or the real-time OS, or something that you're going into, and you're connected to the cloud. You're like, great, got the temperature up there. It's going to the cloud, and here's your temperature feed. Think about this as a full solution. This is a software solution as much as it is a hardware solution. I haven't seen an IoT solution where somebody just gives you a data feed off of that IoT device. You really need a software solution. As full stack is what the phrase we use. A lot of the components that go into a hardware IoT solution are commodity. You guys know it. You bought it. It's relatively inexpensive. I mean, the whole point of the Things Network is to make this a relative commodity for people. So if it's a commodity, how do you make it so it's defensible? Like, you get this customer, and I don't just start a company tomorrow, or the guy next to you starts making a company tomorrow, and suddenly you're out of business because there's a flood of competitors. So what you do is you either try to make it more complex, join IoT with other kinds of hardware or other kinds of software, and make it a bigger solution. You can gain a major learning advantage. If you have all the data from one field, well, you're going to get smarter than the next person. So you could have a learning advantage. Own a difficult channel. So that means that if it takes you a long time to get the customer, remember I told you the bigger the customer, the harder it is to get them, well, that could be a competitive advantage, because now you have customers that are hard to get. Somebody else going into that business is going to need to spend a lot of money and time in order to get those customers. And then obviously scale. The bigger you are, the harder it is for somebody to come after you. You are the entrenched competitor. I think IoT and AI are really a match made in heaven. Give me an example. A doctor might see maybe 2,500 patients a year in a patient panel. And let's say that it's a cardiologist, somebody who's uses a stethoscope every day to listen to the body. Well, what happens if I built a stethoscope that was connected to the internet and was attached to hundreds of thousands of patients? Well, if I start training my software algorithm to listen for the same things that a doctor does, it's going to have far more data and be a more sophisticated analyst of that heart and lung data. So I think actually the merger of the two of them are fascinating. Think big. So what Silicon Valley does really well. They don't just think about one feature or one product. They're thinking about how do I world domination. I don't think a lot of people do enough of that. So I think as you think about your solutions, with great power comes great responsibility. You can solve anybody's problems. Solve big ones. The thing about solving big problems is that it takes a lot of. You might think, wow, it just takes a lot of money. I have to solve some huge problem, and it's going to take me a long time to design my solution. Break it into small parts, achievable parts, and then continue to sell more and more of that solution until it's a very large opportunity. You really should think capital efficient in the beginning. Hardware is not the easiest thing to turn on a dime. You can't just go, oh, we made this product, it doesn't quite work, but we've already made 5,000 units of it. You might have a problem. You really can't deviate that quickly. So use as little capital as possible to make a solution for somebody, see if it works, get the customer to validate it, and then make more of it. In the startup world, we prize speed and execution. It's counterintuitive for as an engineer, I want to get the thing perfect. And Tesla is the worst example because when I got my first Tesla, I thought it was the best product ever. It's like the worst thing for iterative development. Somebody spends billions of dollars to get their product perfect before it goes to market, and it's amazing. The reality is that most companies can't do that. We're not Elon Musk. We don't have billions of dollars to go do it. Let's make it so that it is a minimum viable product. You want to make rapid decisions. You have to get rid of some things in your first V1 of a product. Don't try to do everything. It's actually even nicer to have multiple product lines. I used to say Motorola, because that's who I used to compete against, was a law firm that just happened to make radios. But they were the most amazing company at taking a final product, like what would be the best product for the customer, and breaking it down to 10 revisions. And they would sell you 10 products. Instead of sell you the one magic bullet that would solve your problem, they knew how to sell you 10 of them. That's what an amazing hardware company does. They break the problem down in tangible pieces, they charge the early adopters a lot of money, and then they work their way into a mainstream product. So how do you fund this stuff? My favorite way to fund a company is with customer pre-orders. Binke does this really well. You have to go out and get customers. Customers will give you money. They won't ask for equity. They won't ask for interest. They will give you the money ahead of time. I can't even tell you how many times I've seen it. Walk into a customer and say, where does it hurt? They say, it hurt here. Okay, well, if I make that product, will you pay me? You can ask for the order right there on complete vapor. You can ask them for money. Okay, well, give me $500,000 and I'll go make it for you. Many of them will give you money. So start with a customer pre-order. It's customer validation. It's help building the solution. It's a dedicated ear, and it's a bankable contract. I'm not a huge fan of taking your own dollars. Like, talk about the ultimate risk situation is that if you start bankrolling your own company on credit cards and personal debt, well, now it has to work. I mean, all companies have a high mortality rate. So now you're betting the whole farm, potentially your family's farm, on this. I'd be careful when doing that, but I think that a lot of people do. If you think you can get to some product or deliver some contract, like you have a contract in hand, somebody's willing to pay you, you just need to build the first version of it, maybe you do the personal piece of it. Friends and family I like a lot to fund a business. A lot of people around you are willing to give you some money and willing to let you experiment. And believe it or not, a lot of people aren't expecting the money back. I know you feel like an obligation to them and you should try to make them money, but they want to help you. So I would definitely go to friends and family. If you really think you have something scalable, you go for venture capital. It is not an ordinary fuel. You can't build a lovely $5 to $10 million a year business with venture capital. It doesn't work. My whole business is predicated on building billion-dollar companies. So unless you can be a billion-dollar company, don't take venture capital. You won't get the heat. You won't get the people up your wazoo to try to build a company and go faster and hit the pedal really hard. But if you think you have it, it's a great tool for the job. But it's very few companies get venture capital in the world, and there's plenty of successful, rich people who do not have venture-backed companies. I know plenty of millionaires who, in the IoT space, who have not taken venture capital. It's hard, but it can be done. That's it.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
And if I can add another advice to you guys, whenever you do a PowerPoint presentation, take beautiful pictures as Steven did. I really love them. So,
thanks.
Yeah. Any questions for Steve?
Look at all this.
Don't be shy, because he helps you out to think more entrepreneurial. I know there's a lot of techie guys here who think their product is awesome, but if you want to scale up, you need people like him. So let me ask the question first then. So here next door, we have both big companies, old companies, but also small startup, new individuals building stuff. What is your impression of the ecosystem here, the network of companies we gathered around the Things Network?
I think it's really exciting. I mean, I think that this has all the right components to build some big companies. I mean, I get excited by coverage. I think if we can blanket the world with IoT or with LoRa, I think it sets the stage for some really interesting companies to be built on it. And I'm excited by the enthusiasm. I think there's a lot of momentum around the Things Network, and I hope it's really successful.
Yes. And Wienke and Johan, they made a quite clear distinction. This is the Things Network community.
Yeah.
No, it's not about money, it's just about fun, about technology, about scaling up as a community. And the Things industry, that's their company. Do you see this model more often with new technology, that the same people, actually take two tracks?
Yeah, I mean, I think it does work. I think the open source community is a similar model, where you seed the world full of the product, and I think that there's a group of people who are enterprise or who want more sophisticated services or maybe some enhancements on that. But I think it's a great way. I think it's the open source. It's a tried and true open source model.
Yes. So in that way, we're doing good.
Yeah.
Last call for questions, remarks, theories. This is your chance to talk to Steve, or else you'll be around here, right?
I'll be around, yeah. And you can email me, steve@riot.vc, if you guys have any questions.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Steve.